Hi everyone, I'm Jane, and today we're going to paint these elegant Christmas ornaments with a beautiful bokeh background. Today's video is sponsored by the awesome people over at GraphicStock.com, who were kind enough to give me a subscription to their website so that I could create this painting for you today. With over 300,000 royalty-free photos, vectors, and illustrations, GraphicStock has hands down the largest unlimited download library of images on the internet. A lot of you guys ask me how I come up with ideas for paintings. So we're actually going to use GraphicStock's website today, and I'm going to show you a little bit of my process. As always, make sure you check out the video description below for a full list of materials, as well as a link to GraphicStock's website. So let's go check that out now. So this is a seriously cool website, and all of the images are 100% royalty free. Like this amazing photo of a forest that I would totally love to paint, so I'm going to add that to my folder. And then I can refer back to it whenever I want without having to search for it again. So let me show you the website as well as some of the things that I do to come up with a painting for you guys each week. So let's start by searching for holiday, because I know that I want a holiday painting. So we get kind of a general hodgepodge of images here. Some are photos, some are vectors, some are clip arts, but this is what I do a lot. I'll just do a general search of a basic idea that I have. And I kind of like the idea of these Christmas ornaments. I like the simplicity of the Christmas ball, and so I think I'm going to keep that in mind. So let's actually search for Christmas ornaments. Let's go here to content type and search illustrations. Now in the illustrations, I immediately see this, which I really like because I like the bokeh background and I love the simplicity of this Christmas ornament with all the little details in it, but it's a very simple image. Because I now know that I like this bokeh background, let's search for Christmas lights and see what comes up. So I actually got quite a few bokeh images right there at the top. Let's go ahead and change this to photos. So I really like this. I like the colors and the simple circular shapes that are all kind of overlapping. So I'm going to add this to my folder to save it for inspiration for the painting that I want to do today. Let's see what happens when we change this to vectors. So I have some more bokeh lights, and then I've got some kind of clip art Christmas trees. Some of these are super cute and would make really fun paintings. Okay, I really like this image. Now I don't necessarily like the ornaments for the painting I want to do today, but I do like the composition, the way that they're arranged with each other. So I'm going to add this to my folder because I want to remember the composition of these balls. I also really like the way the bokeh effect is kind of secluded to the bottom here and comes up the side a bit with a darker side over here. Let's see what happens if we look up Christmas bokeh. And I'm going to click it over to illustrations. And oh, I like this. So what I really like about this is that the ornament is very simple. It's just transparent glass. So I'm going to add it to my folder. Now, again, I'm not going to paint this. I like the idea of the glass ornament. So I want to download this photo. So I'm going to download the JPEG. And when I download the JPEG, notice it doesn't have the watermark on it that it has on here. And I've also downloaded this image to my phone, as well as this image. That way I can reference them when I'm painting. So there's actually quite a few websites out there like GraphicStock that offer royalty-free images. But the one thing that I like about GraphicStock more than these other websites is that GraphicStock does a flat annual rate of $99, where a lot of these other websites, they want to charge you like $30 per image. So if I were looking up creepy trees, if I wanted to pay $30 per image every time I wanted to use one of these creepy trees in a video, we would go broke in no time flat. But this holiday season, you can paint any of these photos you like because GraphicStock is offering $50 for a year subscription rather than $99. if you go to graphicstock.com/holidays, or there's a link in the description below that will take you right there. So essentially, for the price of one download from the other sites, you can have access to 300,000 plus images that you can paint and use in your art projects, whatever you want, all completely royalty-free without fear of copyright infringement. With your membership, you're also going to get a 100% royalty-free agreement, which means that you could paint these amazing creepy trees, sell your painting, claim it as your own, all without worry that you are going to get hit with a lawsuit for copyright infringement. I'm just going to add that one to my folder. So again, these are the 4 images that I have chosen, and each of them is going to be used as a little bit of inspiration to come up with my final painting. So let's get started. All right, so I'm starting with a black canvas, and I just painted it with black paint. As always, you can buy a black canvas, you can use black paint, you can use black gesso. Now the reason I'm starting with a black canvas is, even though I'm going to be painting this all in purple and blue, if I don't use it, then the purple and blue is going to be really bright, which will make it a little harder to make some of these lights stand out. But starting with a black canvas, the purple and blue will be a little transparent, so it will be much darker up through here, which will give me the ability to make the white and the bright parts really stand out more. So I'm going to be using a mixture of titanium white, Dioxazine Purple, and phthalo blue, and I'm going to use a little bit of matte medium to help me blend the background. So I'll just put a bit out. The matte medium is really optional. I like to use it because I like the way it helps me blend a little bit better. But if you're comfortable blending without it, you don't have to use the matte medium. I'm going to take my 1-inch flat brush, wet it really good in my jar, and then wipe it off on the edge. And go back and get more water whenever you feel like you need it. So I'm going to load up my brush with matte medium. I'm kind of squishing it in there, which sucks the medium up into the bristles. And I want this bottom area to be lighter. I don't want to take it up too high. It's really just going to be kind of this corner, and then it'll get darker. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of Dioxazine Purple, really not a ton, and about as much phthalo blue. And then I'm going to grab a blob of white, and notice I didn't mix them. They'll mix on my canvas because the matte medium keeps the paint open a little bit longer, so I'll have the ability to mix them. I'm not worried about my brush directionality. I'm just getting the color on there. A little more medium, more purple, more blue. And I didn't pick up any more white. I've still got white on my brush. I'm just gonna lay that down here. I'm not worried about blending just yet. Just get the bulk of the paint off of my brush. And now I can come back with super light pressure and blend those colors together. And I'm not worried about my brush strokes showing. More medium, a lot more purple, and a lot more blue. Now, if I decide that I want a little bit of that white here and there, so kind of like little glow spots in the background, like you would see in a bokeh Christmas light painting, even though I haven't picked up more white, there's still some in my brush. So just get rid of that line a little bit. If I push a little harder right there, I deposit a little bit of white, and now I've got a little bit of a brighter spot in there. And still, see, even though I haven't picked up any white since the beginning, a little bit more pressure deposits a bit of that white. And as this dries, I know that blue and purple look super bright right now, but as they dry, they will become a little bit more transparent and darken a bit. So it's gonna be nice and dark up through here. All right, I'm gonna let this dry, and then we'll come back and start doing our little bokeh Christmas lights down here. All right, so now our background is dry and you can see how much darker this ended up being. Now we're gonna start doing our lights, and the way we're gonna make these seem like lights that are in the distance, that are kind of fuzzed out, kind of like these ones or these ones, is we're gonna use gloss medium or glazing medium. So I'm just gonna put a little bit out on my plate, not a lot, because it dries really fast, and it will dry really fast on my plate too. So I can always get more, but once it starts to thicken up, it becomes hard to work with. Now I've had a lot of people ask me if gloss medium was the same thing as gloss medium and varnish, and it is. That's exactly what I'm using. So you can use, if you find something called gloss medium, you can use that. If you find glazing medium, you can use that. Gloss medium and varnish, it's all the same thing. You can use that as well. I'm going to use this little filbert brush, and I wet it in the jar and then just kind of shook the drip off. I do want to use it with a little bit of water in it. I'm going to load up with quite a bit of medium. I'm going to use more medium here than paint, and that's going to help me get a really transparent effect. So I'm going to come over here to the white and just grab a tiny bit and mix it in with my medium. And if I didn't add enough paint, I can go back and get more. Now these more distant lights are going to be way more transparent, and they're going to be larger. As they come forward, they'll be smaller and the color will be a little more intense. So this one's going to be quite transparent. I'm going to start down here and just kind of freehand a circle. And they don't have to be perfect circles. If you look at a lot of bokeh light photos, they're not always perfect circles. And if the edge is a little bit harder in color, that's okay too, because that happens. I just added a tiny bit more white there. And I'm just gonna do a bunch of these circles all over, mostly in the light area, but I will take a couple here and there up into the darker area. Take some off the edge of your canvas, because that tells you that there's more going on than just what's right here in front of you. Don't overlap them just yet. You want to wait until these are completely dry. Then when you overlap them, you'll get a little bit of a brighter spot where they cross over. But if you do it before they're dry, then you'll just smear them together. And I'm just kind of twirling the brush as I go. So I'm putting it flat, and rather than trying to move my hand around, I'm kind of rolling the brush. But whatever makes sense to you, whatever's comfortable for you to do to get those circles, even if you have to stencil them on, that's fine too. See, that first one we did is pretty dry. So I'm going to take this one right over top of it. And since they're both pretty transparent, I'm not getting a huge amount of color difference between the two, but as we really start layering them, you'll see that happen. And I want the largest concentration of lights down here in this corner. Let's start throwing just a tiny bit of color in there. And I'm not cleaning off my brush, so there's still some white on here, and then a little blue, maybe a tiny bit of purple. And of course the medium. Find one of these guys that's dry. That one's pretty dry. And so that color is really subtle because it's similar to the background, but it will create just enough of a difference as we go. was starting to get some breaks in my lines, so I just got a little extra water on my brush. Let's make a couple of these that are a little bit brighter in the blue and purple department. And let's then go just a little bit whiter. And I just mix that in there with the blue and purple. Still my medium. And we'll start down here because I think this is probably going to be a little brighter than I want it to be, but it's okay because down here I want these to be brighter anyway. These bokeh light backgrounds can look so many different ways, so really look around at a lot of them. The GraphicStock website has so many of them. I was really excited when I saw that. And what I'm doing through here is I'm not mixing more paint, I'm just getting more medium every time. And that way I get a nice graduation of colors. So I start getting ones that are lighter and lighter and lighter. And then when the paint is about gone, I can mix up a different color. I'll get a couple of these super faint ones up in the dark area. All right, now we're gonna go a little bit brighter, and with that, we're gonna go a little bit smaller. So I've got some medium, but I'm gonna tap a bit of it off. I don't want quite as much medium, and I grabbed more white. The more medium, the more transparent. The less medium, the less transparent. So that's why I'm using a little less here. So I'll start right here and do a little bit of a smaller circle. I think I do want just a little more medium than that. And really make sure these overlap. Don't try and keep them separate. That's what makes them really interesting, is that they overlap. So, you know, if you take a blurry photograph or even just blur your eyes looking at a Christmas tree or Christmas lights, then you'll see all of these colors fuzz out and blur together. And that's what we're trying to capture here. And again, we're going to do a heavier concentration of them down in this corner because this is where I want it the brightest. But that can be different for you. If you want to have the colors all over and bright all over, that's perfectly fine. If you want them in a different area, that's okay too. Let's get some brighter purple and blue too now. Maybe even just a bit more than that. When I'm using the purple and blue, I don't have to use quite as much of the medium because they're already fairly transparent. With the white, if you don't use the medium, you're just going to obliterate everything behind it. If you use water to thin the white down, then when you go over it again with another layer, you may actually remove some paint. So that's why I highly recommend the glazing medium. And I know you guys are gonna ask me, can I do this without it? As always, you can do anything you want. Do I recommend it without the medium? No. Does that mean it's impossible? No. Now I've cleaned off my brush and I'm not actually going to use any medium. I'm going to get some pretty bright white ones here and there, small. And this is pretty much going to cover whatever I put it in front of, but these are going to be the closest, brightest little lights. So just kind of pivoting my filbert brush there. Really get some down here in this corner. They also make those little sponge brushes that are round on the end, and you could use one of these, just dip it in your color and kind of stamp it everywhere. I'm kind of a control freak and like to be able to change my mind at a moment's notice and make smaller and larger and actually let the paint and the brush kind of do what they want to do. So that's why I don't use those, but you absolutely can. I'm just going to put one down here in this dark corner. But for the most part, we don't have a lot going on over here. But our ornaments, I'm going to hang the ornaments on this side, so I don't want them to get too obscured by the lights. I know in the pictures that I showed you off of GraphicStock, the ornaments are hanging on both of them in front of the lights, but I decided that I don't want to do it that way. So you can decide to do it that way if that's what you want to do. A little more water just to keep that white flowing nicely. And we're about done here. So for my ornaments, I've decided I want them hanging down this side. And I'm going to do them similar to these swirly ornaments, including the hanging beads, except I'm going to do a composition similar to these. Now let's start by drawing out the lines for the chains. And I'm going to use a watercolor pencil, and the reason I'm using the watercolor pencil instead of chalk is because, like with the bokeh lights here, I'm going to go pretty transparent, and the chalk really affected the transparency of my paint, but this watercolor pencil won't. So I'm going to take a ruler, and you don't have to use a ruler if you don't want to, and make it fairly straight, and I'm going to draw the line for the largest ornament, just down the side. Don't push too hard if you're using a stretched canvas, because if you push too hard and you bend the canvas, then your line actually won't come out straight. So just enough pressure to get the color on there. Now the next ornament, I'm not going to put my ball obviously all the way down here. I put it right about here. So decide where you're going to put it and then place your next ornament in relation to that. So my medium size ornament, I'm going to put right about here. Again, make sure that's pretty straight. Don't push too hard with your pencil or chalk or whatever you're using. And then my small ornament somewhere in between. And then we'll come back and add some of the little drapey bits in a little bit. All right, now we're going to start placing our ornaments on the line. And you can freehand these. I'm actually pretty comfortable freehanding the circles, but for the demonstration, I'm going to use stencils or just something to trace the circle on with. And I'm going to use this jar of stucco medium. Make sure that you place it so that it's directly in the center of the line. Hold it there nice and secure, and then just lightly trace around the edge. And this is my smallest ornament. For the next size, I'm going to use a slightly larger medium jar. And I'm going to make it almost touching my small ornament. And then I'm going to use this plastic cup for the large one. Now I am going to do some of the little curly details in these, but I'm also going to paint in to make it look like a glass ball, like it's got a little reflection on it. And I'm going to use transparent mixing white for that, or zinc white, whatever you have. If you don't have either of these, you can use titanium white. While I was working this up, I did it with both the zinc white, which ultimately I liked the best. I did it with just titanium white and water, which I felt like was just way too strong. And I did it with titanium white and glazing medium, similar to some of these lights over here. Now that worked fine, but it was just a little harder to work with to get a smooth effect. So that's why I went with the transparent mixing white. Ultimately, I liked the way that that looked and the workability of it the best. So again, with my filbert, and it's quite damp, I just shook off the extra drip of water. And I'm gonna load up with a little bit of the transparent mixing white. Now, this paint is quite clear, and that's why it's called transparent mixing white, so it won't overpower everything. I'm just going to use the tip of the brush and put my hand on my canvas so I've got some control, and just start carving out that outer edge. Dip my brush in a little bit more water, and I'm going to smooth out that line. If it's still too much of a line, just clean your brush off a little bit. Take a damp brush, and you can smooth over it again. You can even wipe it with your finger a little bit to help get rid of any hard edges in there. Same thing on the other side. A little extra water. And now I'm going to get a bit more than what I did. My brush is fairly dry now. And I'm going to put it just somewhere on the ball and do a little swoop for a shine. And it doesn't matter where you put those. The only thing that matters is that it's pretty consistent between the three orbs. Let's go ahead and do our smaller two the exact same way. Just remember, you can always get rid of that line. You just want to do it before it dries. If it dries, you won't be able to get rid of it, but before it's there, you can absolutely change that. Now, as we were adding the highlight edge around these glass globes, you could probably see some of the lines and it looked kind of weird. But notice I didn't worry about that because I know that when it dries, the transparent mixing white goes a little bit more transparent than when it's wet. But also I'm gonna add some details on top of here. So if there's a little bit of a line, like on this one, I feel like there's a tiny hint of a line up here and right here. I'm not really worried about that because the details that I add over top of it are gonna obscure that. So I'm going to this little round brush, it's kind of a liner brush, and some white, and I'm gonna start adding some details. Now the important thing when you're doing this is to use a little extra water to get nice crisp lines. So I grabbed an extra little drip and I'm gonna mix it in with my paint. Now you don't wanna mix it too much because then your white will go quite transparent. But just enough that you get a nice flow. And hold your brush like it's a pencil. Hold it right down here on the ferrule and put your hand on your canvas. That's gonna give you much more control than holding it like this. You're gonna have little to no control there. So I'm gonna start here. And I'm just gonna start doing some of the little curly designs, kind of like in the first ornament photo. But do this however you're comfortable doing it. And then I'm gonna add some little snowflake star looking things, just very simple, just a line, an angled line, and another one. And I'm gonna do those in all different shapes, sizes, orientations, just kind of all over, just little starbursts. Wherever you feel like you have a little hole that needs just a little something extra. And then I'm gonna come into my white and I'm gonna kind of swirl around in there and get a good sized blob on the end. And I'm just gonna lightly come through here and touch almost randomly. Some are bigger, some are smaller. There's a plane going by overhead that's kind of loud. You can add these in a design if you like. Just make sure you keep them inside of the globe and not outside of it. Now, once you're done with all of this, if you like, you can take some silver paint and go over top of it. I wouldn't recommend doing it in the first place with silver paint. You can if you want, but the metallic paints tend to be a little bit transparent, and so you'll just really get the shine of silver, but you won't really get the detail. Even if you mix it with the white, it kind of takes the opacity of the white away a little bit. We'll worry about the top of the ornament after we've got them all filled in. Again, just a little extra water in my white paint. Probably even a little more than that. I don't know if you can tell, but I've got some little breaks in my line. That just means my paint wasn't quite wet enough. I'm going to do each of them just a little bit different, but you can do them all the same if you want to. let's put the little top on our ornament, and I'm just going to use white. And I'm just going to start maybe a ½ inch up from the top, and make sure you draw this line right on this line here so that it's in the center. That way your ornament will seem to hang straight. So just a little bit of a line. Bring it down at a bit of an angle, down into the ornament. And then I'm just going to put a little zigzag on the bottom there. And fill it in with white. Again, this is another spot where you could add some silver afterwards. Little extra water so I can draw a little line, and we're going to put the little loop on the top that it's going to be hanging on. All right, what we're gonna do now is add the beaded chain to each of our ornaments. And I'm using the same brush. You can do this a million different ways. You can use the end of your brush to make the dots. You could use a stylus, whatever you want. I'm gonna use the paint end, and the reason for that is because I wanna be able to control how big or small the beads are. Like on this image, how we have larger and smaller ones, I wanna do that. And it's hard to do with using the end of the brush. So I'm going to use the paint end so that I can swirl them in exactly the size that I want. So just like before, I'm kind of swirling my paint into the white so that I can get a good amount on the end. See how it's kind of hanging off the end there? I'm going to use that little point to start. And you just want to make sure that they're fairly spaced out evenly. So it's going to take you a while. This is another one of those Zen moments. Just take your time and find a happy place, think of something nice, and make a million dots. Now mine doesn't, but if perchance your strand happens to go behind one of your ornaments, I would, if mine were doing that, I would just stop the beads where it touches the ornament, let it be obscured by the ornament, and then start it on the other side. But if you want to make some really faint ones inside your ornament to say that it's showing through just a little bit, that's okay too. All right, now we're gonna add some more of the chains, and I'm gonna look at the image here and kind of see how they're arranged. Some of them go down in front of the ornaments, some don't, some have the larger beads on them, some are small. So I'm just gonna get kind of an idea of how these are arranged. We have kind of a large clump of them right here on this side, and over here we just have a couple of extra ones. So get an idea of where you want them positioned, and then get your ruler and draw the lines again with your watercolor pencil or chalk. I think I'm going to have one on this side that kind of comes down in front of this ball a little bit. So putting these on here is really all about composition. You want to make sure that they're not all spaced perfectly the same distance from each other. You want to make sure that some are longer, some are shorter. Just make a really interesting mix here. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch me do all of these dots at normal speed. I am going to zoom in here just so I can show you how I'm going to make the larger dots. So I've got my brush, and again, swirling into the paint to get quite a bit on the end of my brush. And I'm going to start down here, maybe with a smaller one. a little bit of a bigger one. Maybe I'll just put some more pressure on it. And for a larger one here, I'm just going to kind of swirl the brush around. And that's really all I'm going to do all the way up on each thread. And then sign it and you're done. And there you have a classy and elegant holiday painting, all made from royalty-free images. Thank you again to my sponsor GraphicStock for making this video possible today. Make sure you check out the video description below for links to their website as well as to their holiday promotion. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend who you think would like it as well. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure that you do so that you can paint with me every week. And as always, thank you for painting with me, everyone. I'll see you next time.